Super excited episode for you guys. After a week off, we had some schedule changes, some things happened, and so we had a week off. And I hope you had a week off. So you had 1 hour to listen to anything else you wanted, but I am glad you're back because you're listening to this. Today, we have one of my heroes on, and this is kind of a funny story. Somebody posted this person's book, and I asked them about it because of the peculiar title, and then I just read it, and it was one of those books where you just motor through it. You know, I took it to the coffee shop, I took it everywhere with me, and I'm not like a carry the book with me guy, kind of guy. And it's called Profit First by Michalowicz, and it is just a pleasure to read. If you're looking for a system of how to organize your money when it actually comes in. So let's say, you book $10,000 worth of weddings or $10,000 worth of services. Where do you put all that money? Do you just put it in, business income and then take a little bit out when you need it for your personal life? What about taxes? How do we save for that? And lots of people have different systems, but Michael's was the first one I found that it fit all the needs, and it wasn't too complicated at all. And I felt ready to do. It was easy to do. With my bank, they were ready for it. And so it was really, really cool. And so we're just going to dive into what it means to be a profit first run business, Michael's history of books and kind of how he got into the entrepreneurship game and his falls and his startups and what we're doing for 2019 and what we're excited about. So without any further ado, here's Michael Michalowicz. Michael, how's it going, man?
It's going well, Adam. How are you?
Doing well. I always want to start off with kind of a fun question to throw you off that is not about business at all. What is your favorite hair metal band?
Oh, Def Leppard. But let me just put a little qualifier around that. They were my favorite hair metal band. They've sold out so badly. I can't stand it. But the album Pyromania is my favorite album of all time. Actually, I was cranking it this morning when I went to the gym.
I love that. I literally had written down, what would be my favorites, and I had Def Leppard and Bon Jovi. So
I love Bon Jovi too.
We're in good company. That's awesome. Very cool, man. So for my perspective for you is I found your book through a recommendation of a friend on Instagram, and it was called Profit First, and I was like, oh, that's kind of funky. That's weird. And I read it, and honestly, you'll love this. This is like a good one. We'll just start with the testimonial right here. I got my P&L statement for the year last December, and it had been 1 whole year since starting Profit First or implementing it into my business. Yeah. And I had 300% more cash in my bank accounts than I did the year before.
Nice.
And
3 times the cash.
Yeah. And it's like I wasn't nervous when we had to pay our quarterly taxes. We weren't nervous come tax time. We were prepared. We were over prepared because we did conservative for saving for taxes. And, we hit all these other financial goals despite our revenue. It grew a decent amount, but nothing insane. It didn't grow 300%. And so I'm a hardcore profit first guy. So people are like, Adam, what should I read? I'm like, well, do you want to make money? Do you want to keep it? And so I'm a big fan of Profit First. But before you wrote Profit First, you wrote tons of other books. Tell me a little bit about your story, your background. You've helped businesses big and small. What's kind of the Mike Michalowicz?
I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I never planned to be. I graduated college and actually couldn't get a good job. I got a job, but not one that I really particularly enjoyed. And so one day, literally with way too much beer in myself, I was talking with a friend, and I'm like, I'm going to start my own business. I'm better than the company I work for. He's like, well, then start your own business. And I'm like, yeah, I'm seriously going to do it. He's like, well, stop being such a sissy and do it. And I'm like, I'm going to do it. And like this drunken screaming of how I'm going to start a business, I started one drunk that night and quit my job in the morning and then regretted everything I had done. I actually, when I was 23, I already had my first son and my wife. And so, and we now have 3 kids. We've been married for decades. And what I realize is fear is an amazing motivator for, I think, all of us. I was terrified. I had no idea what I was doing, but fear got me up out of bed and knocking on doors and just trying to build a business. Fear, I think, if it plays out permanently, actually becomes harmful. It becomes stress and actually can cause illness and so forth. But in the beginning, I think fear is a big tool, a big asset. And I built that business. It took 8 or 9 years, and I sold it. And I started another business in computer crime investigation. Built that very quickly and sold it. And
what in the world? what was that? I said, what in the world? Computer crime investigation. Like, what was the first business? Because most people's first business that they're just trying, or your first lemonade stand, you're not keeping running for 9 years. What was that first business?
First business was computer systems integration. That's what they used to call it, or network systems integration. Today they call them MSPs. Basically, we'd set up computer systems networks for offices. And the reason I got into that, my first job was in that. So I'm like, okay, I guess I can do stuff with computers. The forensics business came out of watching the show CSI. I'm like, I could do that. That looks like amazing fun. And what was fascinating about that project or that business is when I started it, within 6 months, the Enron trial had broken open, and we got a call.
Wow.
And we became a lead investigator in what was called the Nigerian barge trials, a major component of the Enron trial, and that put us on the map. I mean, we made gobs of income from that project, but then we got hired by Christy Brinkley. Michael Jackson called our office, his lawyers, when he was accused of, wrongfully, I believe, of child molestation and these horrible accusations. But we started getting called on these cases, and because of the notoriety we had achieved so quickly, 2.5 years into that business, a Fortune 500 came in and acquired us. And, those are kind of the resume bullet points. The reality that I like to share, because I think it's most relevant, is those businesses struggled while I was operating them. They weren't profitable. I was focused on top line, thinking profit would just happen. It didn't. I refinanced my house on multiple occasions to cover salary. I borrowed from friends and family just to keep the business afloat. Even though we were on a run, the second company, for $7 million in revenue, I had about $600,000 of debt. But my arrogance grew with the top line. And then after I sold that company, I said, I'm going to become an angel investor. I started multiple businesses. I had no right to be in that space. I was as chock full of arrogance and ignorance, a deadly combination. That collapsed. I actually lost all of the money I've earned in selling my prior 2 companies and had to start over. And it was a not so glorious collapse. I went into depression. I lost my house over this, and my possessions nearly wiped out our family financially. I never declared bankruptcy because I felt that my obligation was to pay back the creditors. It wasn't their fault that I'm an idiot. And I had to start again. And the beautiful thing, even though I wish no one to experience that proverbial cardiac arrest of your life, the value, though, was it awoke in me to realize I know very little about entrepreneurship. I still know very little, but I thirst to understand it and make it very consumable for myself and ultimately for others. And that's why I became an author. There's a saying, when you have all the money in the world, what would you do? Well, I found there's a complementary saying. When you have no money in this world, what will you do? Because when those two answers are the exact same thing, I think that's our calling. And to qualify that, if you have all the money in the world, the problem with that question is it presumes the only way to achieve what that thing you want to do is to have all the money in the world. So, I remember saying to myself, one day, if I had all the money in the world and I didn't have to worry about money, I would be an author. And which precluded the fact that I had to become a multi-millionaire some other way to ever pursue that passion. But once I lost all my money and I literally had $0, and the one thing we could afford was a rusty Dodge Durango blue and rust color, not because that was the color, because that was the rust on it. And I said, I have no money. What do I want to do? I'm like, I want to be an author. I'm going to be an author. And that aligned with my long-term dream. And the only shift now was, how do I make a living being an author? So I set out to not just accomplish my dream, but to make it a vocation.
That's crazy. That's insane. I think what I've seen, and you've seen this much more than I do, is even when I first started my business, you make your first $5,000 in revenue, and you're like, well, this is $5,000. And then you make your next 25, your 100K, and for you get into 7 figures, and you're like, no, we actually did take in this amount of money. Like, where did it go? And Like people struggle with that so much, and they're like, yeah, I make 6 figures a year. And I'm like, are you profiting that much? Like, what's the deal? And the biggest thing for me that I've learned from you was just kind of, people need a system, because everybody's going to tell you kind of one little tip or trick. And it's like, no, here is just a plan. And you can, there are multiple plans, but here is one. And like for you to run so many businesses that did so well, quote unquote, but not make any profit, that's tough.
Right. It's tough. And then I fall into a trap that thinking the way out of this is to actually grow the business more. That's the most common trap entrepreneurs fall in. Any struggle they have, financial struggles, or time struggles, they work their ass off, they think that the solution is to grow more. And that's abjectly wrong. There's something fundamentally wrong with the business. If you're working, 70-hour or 80-hour or 90, one guy reported a 99-hour work week. Well, I don't even know what that constitutes, but his solution was, I don't want to work this much. I can't sustain it. I need to grow out of it. And same thing with profitability. The thing is, if your business isn't structurally sound and you're working your tail off and the business is dependent on you, or you're not making profit, and you grow, you actually put more stress on the organization. Sales translates directly to stress, because sales is obligation. Every time I sell something to you, Adam, I have a responsibility now to deliver on my promise. You gave me money, or will give me money, but I have to deliver on it. So the more I sell, the more stress I'm putting on the organization. The solution to this is systemization, and it's profitability. That took me a long time to figure out, that growth is a result of good systems. It doesn't bring about good systems.
Wow, I love that. So what's the solution there? And let's say, maybe it's a coffee shop or a solopreneur like I am. Yeah. What's the next objective for them to, one, either have profit, or could the goal be kind of different? So say somebody, they're doing quote unquote just fine. They're profitable, it pays the bills, they're retiring, it's fine. But if they wanted to grow, like you said, it would add more obligation. But maybe, I have a friend of mine who's been doing photography for a long time, and things are going well, but his main goal is very CEO-like, to where he wants to work 10 hours a week. That's what he wants to do, but he doesn't need to make the 7 figures, so like, how do you start finding that sweet spot?
Yeah. And I would argue he can work 10 hours a week and make the 7 figures. Like, I don't think they're exclusive of each other. I found there's a root cause for every disease, if you will, that we have, and we got to focus on the root cause. So the profitability, if you want your business to be profitable, the root cause is simply root solution is taking your profit first, because then everything else back calculates from that. So the method, I call it the profit first method. The method is, every time a sale comes in, take a predetermined percentage of the profit target you're aiming for. Maybe start low at 5 or 10%. Maybe you grow it to 20, 30, 40%. One thing I suggest is never based upon the industry average. That's like if you ever have a child, telling your child, hey, what's the class average? And when you find out, saying, okay, just do whatever the average does. Like, that's stupid. What we tell our children is, be the best of who you are. Amplify your strengths. Play up who you are. So that's true to our business too. We want to play into our strengths. We want to be the most of ourselves. Once you determine that profit percentage, every time a transaction comes in, a $1,000 deposit comes in, and say you start with 10% profit, we immediately take $100, we hide it away from our business, and then the remainder, $1,000 will be $10. So $990 is left to run the business. $900 is left to run the business if we take 10%.
Right.
And what we're doing now is reverse engineering profit. What our business is saying, if you want to achieve 10% profit, you must run your business off $900. Figure it out. And if you can't figure it out, that means you have fundamental issues with your business. Not that the system doesn't work. That means you're running too many costs and expenses, need to cut unnecessary expenses. It may mean that you have inappropriate margins. You need to increase your margins. But by taking our profit first, it reveals the problems in our businesses. And then when it comes to the time component, like I want to work 10 hours a week, the root cause I found, and this is typically what I call now the superhero syndrome. Most entrepreneurs, when I say most, I'm referring to myself. Most entrepreneurs consider themselves superheroes. And that's where my ego was. I was like, oh my gosh, I can swoop in and save my business. A customer's pissed. I'll swoop in and fix that again. We're failing to deliver. I'll swoop in and work extra hours to bring it about. I saw the business as dependent upon me. But I now have concluded that superheroes kind of suck. And the The reason superheroes suck is because they force a dependency. Like if we do the analogy with, like, say, Superman, and Superman's fighting Lex Luthor, the only way for Lex Luthor to be defeated is if Superman shows up. In fact, because Superman is showing up, mankind weakens their ability to defend themselves. So there's this awkward dependency that comes on Superman. Superman also leaves a wake of destruction. I don't know if you're watching those movies, like a whole city is destroyed. And they don't do an after part of that movie. Lex Luthor's defeated. They don't then show mankind doing cleanup for 20 years of the destroyed city, but that's what comes next. And as superheroes for a business, we come in and maybe we fix that client, but we destroy the systems. Or maybe we don't even build systems. So now there's all this kind of panic behind the scenes. We force this dependency where our own employees like, I don't know how to fix this. We got to call in superhero Mike again or superhero Adam to swoop in and save us. I think we got to start considering ourselves super visionaries, not superheroes. What I mean by this is that we have a very clear vision of where we want our business to lead, the impact it's going to have on our world, our society, our clients. We also have a very clear vision of what our employees or virtual help or whoever, or even our clients, what their personal visions are, because they're not going to align with our business vision. Everyone has their own dream. And our job then is to align the outcome we want for the organization with the outcomes everyone wants for the individual selves. And then make strategic and tactical decisions as we move along to make sure we're in constant alignment. That should be our aspiration. And as long as we cling to that superhero title, we're going to cling to working more and more hours, carrying the business on our back. And that's a fallacy. A business can't grow that way.
When somebody does realize all of that, I guess we'd have to analyze, if they wanted to grow, we'd have to analyze why they want to grow, and see what the reasoning is. But let's say that reason is, a good reason, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
What are their next steps to make sure that they grow well? Or is it just to keep the system the whole way through and say, yeah, we're making more, our expenses would cover another employee, or how does that work?
Yeah. So I love that question of why you want to grow, because that inevitably starts drawing out the real reasoning behind why they had the business. When I ask most people why they want to grow, they say, because I want more money. And I say, well, why do you want more money? Well, so I can live a higher standard of living. So I say, okay, so you actually want to live a higher standard of living. Like, yeah. And I said, what would be the source for that? They say, well, if I have more personal income coming in. Okay, so we're not talking about a bigger business necessarily. We're talking about you living a new standard of living. Why don't we focus on profitability first? We start building a profit system. Some people want to grow simply for the ego component. Like, I want to be bigger than anyone else in my industry because I want to be able to pound my chest harder. That was actually a mentality that I had for a long time. And what we do is evaluate is how serving is that for you? I mean, if you pull that off, then what's next? And sometimes it can be a very ego-driven thing now, like, I want to be the biggest company in the world. So I try to dig in there and say, well, what's the impact we're having on a greater community or on others that is even more driving? So for me, myself, as I went through this exercise, I discovered I don't want to grow for growth's sake and pounding my chest nearly as much as I want to grow to be of service to my clients, my readership. And specifically, it's around this concept of eradicating entrepreneurial poverty. Like, that's my life's mission. And once that became clear, my understanding what I call entrepreneurial poverty is and how to fix it, now it's all about go, baby, go, baby, go. And I don't know how big my organization or impact will be, but that almost has become irrelevant. It's all about serving this purpose. So we've got to start off with the why. Once you have the why, then we have to tackle what is the biggest roadblock to getting there. So, and this goes in certain steps. Interestingly, even today, I'm working on my brand new book. It's not going to come out for until 2020, so it's a ways out. But I'm working on this model and testing it kind of behind the scenes here. And what I've concluded, I can't reveal much at all from it currently, but I'll tell you what the thesis is. I believe the biggest problem that every entrepreneur has is that they don't know what their biggest problem is. In other words, it's this constant panic of addressing apparent issues. Oh, we need more sales. Oh, we got to jump on this. Oh, we got to jump on that. And it's constant jumping around to all these apparent issues. We don't spend the time to determine what's the most impactful thing that we can do as an organization that will leapfrog us forward. And so for some businesses, it could be profit. It's not been addressed yet. Some businesses are picking arbitrary sales number. I want to achieve $1 million. I want to have that, or maybe it's 5 million. I'll tell you, I've experienced both. It ain't about the revenue. What it is about the lifestyle it supports, at least for me, much more than the revenue. So a lot of businesses the owners don't tie back their revenue objectives to their personal objectives, which is something that's mandatory. So these businesses go through a linear progression of challenges. What we need to do if you want to grow your business, whatever that growing means to you, is identify what's the next significant or impactful roadblock that's in the way that need to clear. Clear that and your business leapfrogs forward. If we try to fix everything or just randomly say, you know what, I just need to hire a better sales team, that won't move you forward because there's something else impeding your growth. We really need to diagnose what is truly the next thing impeding our progress and resolve that. And like I said, I can't reveal yet. That's the model I'm working on. It's complex, and I don't even understand it fully yet. That's why I can't reveal it, because it's still in the hypothesis stage. It hasn't achieved thesis stage. But that's what I'm working on, this linear progression model.
That's fascinating. I was going to ask you straight up, and I was going to be like, all right, so how do we remove that roadblock? Obviously, but I don't want to reveal too much because, for some people, we have a ton of photographers on the show and a ton of kind of solopreneurs, and maybe, for us and some people, they don't even see this, but the answer might just be, hey, shoot 5 more gigs, at whatever, do that, and it will unlock that kind of threshold, that margin that you need.
What one easy thing that any business can do is take pause just for a half a day and simply evaluate what's working in your business and what's not working. So when I say what's working, like, who are the best clients that pay you a premium that you enjoy working with? What do you get the most joy? What kind of work, like the studio headshot type thing, or do you prefer kind of out in the field? Like, defining what's working. Then our goal is to amplify what's working. So whatever's working for you, do more of that. But we have to be just as critical of what's not working. I bought a studio in the local strip mall and no one comes here yet. It's costing me $3,000 a month to maintain this place. That's not working. It may be satisfying some ego to say, I have a studio, but shit, that's costing your business almost $40,000 a year. Let's not kid ourselves. That's not good marketing. Getting someone that's trying to buy some steak and beans at the store next to you doesn't mean they're going to be a great studio. It's great for your studio. So we have to have the discipline of firing or removing the bad components of our business. So any business can do that analysis. Look at what's working and amplify it. Look at what's not working and rejigger it, meaning change it around, or ideally trash it in its entirety.
Now, let's say, just giving a good example of, you finally hire maybe a virtual assistant, right? So lots of people are outsourcing just little things like email. They're outsourcing, they believe, because there is the good side of, they're purchasing some of their time back maybe. Now, what is the kind of analysis that we should be doing to know if that's worth it? Let's say that we get back 10 hours a week of our time. How do we determine if that's a good decision depending on what we spent?
Yeah. So, and I'm not trying to plug my books, but I wrote about this study.
Plug away, man.
And I'm not trying to promote books here. I just, in Clockwork, I extensively studied this. And there's 2 things. First of all, we need a candid analysis of ourselves. It is easy to say, oh, I spend only about 4 or 5 hours a week on email, but a candid analysis is where you actually track it. So I suggest people track their activities for at least 1 or 2 consecutive weeks. It is extremely revealing. I did this for myself. Once you do that, we need to take a next step, which maybe a lot of people consider tracking their work, but we need to categorize it. And I explained that there's these 4 levels of work in any business. The first, and they're all use the letter D. The base level is called doing. And doing is work where it derives a benefit to our clients, taking those shoots. It's editing their pictures. And it's any supportive work that supports the organization in delivering its offering. So it's the marketing, it's the invoicing, it's all the components, quite frankly, where we're doing work. The next level up is called deciding. And many businesses will get trapped here. And I bet you many photographers listening right now can relate to this. Deciding is where you bring on that help, that virtual assistant, maybe someone to shadow you a little bit and almost like an intern. And they come to us with questions. They say, hey, how do you want me to set up this tripod? Like, where should I position it? And you give them the answer. And then 10 minutes later, they come back and say, hey, I have another question about this tripod. And in the beginning, it's empowering because they're showing that they're interested in learning. But very soon it becomes frustrating because they're clearly morons. They can't pick this stuff up. And then we get so frustrated. But this is a trap because they're not morons. The trap is that when we make decisions for the employees, it protects them from making bad moves, therefore they can't be reprimanded, and it satisfies our ego. I know all. And it puts us back in that superhero complex. So deciding for others is very dangerous. In fact, I found this Hindu goddess, her name is Kali, and Kali is a female figurehead with 8 arms. That's what our organization becomes. One decision maker, you, with these people just running around and doing the tasks you assign them and coming back for the next directive or for you to answer a question. So we need to move to the next level up, which is called delegating. A lot of people think they're delegating work. We're not. Delegation is not the assignment of tasks. It's the assignment of outcomes. It's not like, hey, go set that tripod. It's, hey, we need to take pictures that achieve a certain look or style or whatever. Go set up our equipment so that'll achieve that. It's allowing the intern or whoever the work is to make their own decisions. Now, a lot of people know about delegation. There's 2 elements that people miss out on. The first one, even though we may know it, we don't often do it, is when they do come back and say, well, what should I do here? We often feel compelled to make a decision for them and give them direction. That's the mistake because we're disempowering them. We need to tell them, well, what's your decision? How are you going to go about it? And I think a lot of us know that, but we don't inherently do that. But you need to do that to release the superhero and become the supervisionary. But the other component, which no one freaking does, and it's the most important thing, is supporting all decision making. So when that intern comes back and does something stupid, like, oh, I set the tripod, I put it so the 3 legs are facing up, and where you connect the camera is now embedded in the ground. I think this is really cool. And you're like, oh my! In your head, you're like, who is this moron? But you have to say, you know what? Awesome! I'm so happy you made a decision for our business. Let's try it out. And if it doesn't work, we're going to work collectively to improve this. But the fact you made a decision that you felt was in the best interest of our organization, that's why I've hired you. Good job. And now you're empowering them to make mistakes and correct them. And that's the mistake that so many entrepreneurs don't take. Instead, they say, are you an effing idiot? Oh, I can't believe this. 3 legs go down, you fool. And we actually start disempowering them. So you have to support all decision making. And then that elevates us to the highest level, which is called designer. Designer is someone I already talked about. You have a clear vision of where you want to bring the business, and now you're making strategic and tactical decisions to choreograph your resources, your people, and your clients, everything around you to achieve that outcome as efficiently as possible. That's the supervisionary.
I love it. I love it. Now, one thing I noticed when I was kind of diving into just, authors are kind of weird things because our first impression is the book, right? And so we're diving over through the book, we read it, we're like, oh, I like this guy. And we usually, we go try and find more content from that person. So obviously books are like the, sideways linear, if you will. And then we try and go to different spaces as well. So, for me, I subscribe to Profit First podcast. I listen to it. I love it. Our music is not as intense as yours, but I do love it. And, everybody should definitely listen to it. But then the next thing too, I noticed, obviously for social media, what is your personal kind of your brand position for social media? I know Instagram, not as strong as you might not be focusing on that, whereas Twitter seems to be really popular for you.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. So social media for me, Twitter is where I hang out. Instagram, I suck at it. Even though there's a contingent of people that are kind of following me there, and of course on Facebook and these other platforms. But here's what I found. It's important to go, of course, where your customers are. There's no question about that. But also it's important to go where your strength is. I'm very good at quick quips and millisecond conversations. So Twitter is a perfect platform for that. Instagram becomes draining for me. It's a lot of invested time. And even though there's opportunity for there, I would fail to deliver the best of myself. And therefore, even though I may have customers there, that will start burning my
it's like diminishing returns, right?
Yeah. There you go. Diminishing returns. So I concentrate on Twitter because that's the best matchup between what constituency of my readership goes and does and what I'm best at.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome, man. So now we've kind of talked, we've gone everywhere we possibly could go really quickly, which I love, which is awesome. Yeah. So tell me about Clockwork just in general. That's the first book after Profit First, or was there one in between?
No, it's the first one after. So the sequence of books, the very first book I wrote was Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, which explored just the early startups phases. That was 10 years ago now. And then I wrote The Pumpkin Plan, Surge, Profit First, and then Clockwork. So Clockwork is Well, here's what I discovered. There are certain stages of needs. This is actually going to be discussed in my next book. It kind of like is like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if a base need is not addressed according to Maslow, we revert to it. For example, oxygen, breathing in oxygen is arguably the most important thing we do. If we're deprived of oxygen for merely 3 minutes, we're done. So the availability of oxygen is critical. Then we need food and then shelter, love as you go up his hierarchy. The thing is, you could be on a romantic date. That's the definition of belonging and love, according to Maslow, and having a phenomenal time. And all of a sudden, there's a lack of oxygen, right? The oxygen, you start gagging and stuff like that. All of a sudden, nothing matters about this date anymore. I don't care how attracted you are to this other person or whatever. All that matters is the survival mechanism. You're going to try to save yourself and maybe save your partner by trying to get air. You're trying to escape from that space. So what he says is, when a lower level need is not addressed, our intention focuses on that until it's resolved. Well, I found in entrepreneurship, we have these different stages. The base level, the oxygen level is sales. Like if you have no money coming in, nothing else matters, but you need sales.
Right.
The next level up we touched on is profit. I consider profit the nutrition for a business, the food, and sales, the oxygen. Interesting and sadly, many businesses are starving to death, no nutrition, yet they are gasping for air to solve it, which will never solve it. Meaning you're trying to sell more to resolve a profit issue. So that's wrong. Well, the next level up is time. Once you are making money, inbound cash flow, and keeping money, that's what profit does. Then it comes about not working those ridiculous amount of hours. How do I bring balance to my life? How do I bring efficiency to my life? How do I make the organization run efficiently? Ultimately, we'll find that we're in business to support our lives. We're not in life to support our business. And what Clockwork does is addresses that. And the subtitle of the book is Design Your Business to Run Itself. I found that there are 7 distinct steps, partially based upon what I discovered in researching beehives, interestingly, because they're very efficient organizations, if you will. I deconstructed that. I then compared it to all these existing businesses that were extremely efficient to find common threads, and found these 7 steps that these organizations follow and beehives definitely follow to achieve extreme efficiency with very little consumption of energy, meaning our time. So that's what Clockwork explores, how to make your business run on automatic without you.
I love that. That's kind of there was a book, I want to say now it's probably 10 or 15 years old, not to bring up another book while we're talking about one, but the E-Myth was kind of like the tip of the spear.
God, yeah, that's exactly it. So that was Michael Gerber, work on the business work versus work in the business. I had the honor of keynoting with him in Mexico, in Monterrey, Mexico. This is about 4 years ago. We both do a keynote back to back. Afterwards, I grabbed I say, Michael, you want to grab dinner? He says, yes. So myself, Michael, and his bodyguard, by the way, went out, which was kind of funny. Like it was a little bit over the top in my opinion, but whatever. So we go out to dinner in Mexico, and this question hits me. I said, Michael, I am a massive fan of E-Myth. I think it's a must-read book. I said, I do have one challenge, though. I think how I consumed it, I believe a lot of entrepreneurs consume it, is that shifting from working in the business where you're doing work to on the business where you're the designer, very similar kind of terminology, that it's a switch. Like it'll happen one day. And I said, I actually believe it's a throttle, but it doesn't feel like the book throttles you. It seems like this one day, if you get to a certain size, it's a mind shift. And so I said, I'm going to write the book that transitions you over. And Michael ultimately became an endorser of my books. So I've been privileged by that. So Clockwork is a complement, in my opinion, to E-Myth. E-Myth gives you the theory and some amazing storytelling of what it's like before and after of in versus on. Clockwork, I would argue, is the practical application of throttling yourself. Tomorrow, you won't be working on your business exclusively. Your business will still need you. You still need to be taking those pictures. But how do you slowly but surely remove yourself more and more over time? And Clockwork is designed that for most businesses, it takes about 12 months to maybe 24 months to fully extract yourself from the business and have the business running on automatic.
It seems like even when I read E-Myth, it was one of those things where, and we can even say too, it's like somebody showing you the map and they say, hey, if you're thinking about going to Disney World, here's all the things you could do at Disney World. Here's the map. Here's why you would want to go here. But Clockwork is actually, we're taking the hike and we say, all right, we're going to go to Magic Mountain because that's where it's going to be, where we can expand and we can go bigger. And there's a lot of books like that in business where it's like you have the let's talk theory and you're like, yeah, it would be nice if I could have Saturdays off and, not have to shoot or whatever somebody's ideal is. And then, but how do we actionably get there? And that's why I wanted to kind of dive in this episode, just be that balance of, getting sales, but also the health of the business, that's the one thing I see. And I'll ask you too, is the health of the profitability. Even if, a company makes only 5% profit, like at least it's 5%. But so many businesses don't, and they again, you said generate sales out of scarcity mindset, and it's tough. Do you see anything else other than that profitability and the health of a business that kind of plagues the businesses that you've seen from big to little? What's another big mistake you've seen?
Yeah. So just to drive home a little bit more on that profitability, there's a statistic that floats around stating that 83% of small businesses. By the way, the SBA defines a small business as a company that does $25 million in annual revenue or less, which absolutely is my business. And I suspect, Adam, it's yours. And we are the definition of small business. 83% of us are surviving in a check-to-check mentality, meaning if we don't get in sales immediately, we're going to struggle or be unable to pay our rent, our employees, our equipment, our subscriptions, whatever it is. So it's this constant hand-to-mouth. So the first thing that prohibits growth is mastery of profitability. It's actually not more sales. Most people are trying to sell their way into it. For most businesses, at least 83% of us, it's mastering profitability. That's where you got to take your profit first. Then the next thing then is actually narrowing down our offering. And that confuses a lot of people. Most small businesses actually continue to try to expand their offering. The more things I can offer to more people, the better. And there's this concept called a captive customer. Captive customer is someone that buys a service from you. It's a remarkable experience for them, so they are loyal to you now. Now the idea is go to them and offer them more things. But the problem here is the more variability in what we offer, the more it dilutes our ability to be masterful. So we say, you know what, instead of just doing portrait shots, I know, because you're a CEO of a company, maybe I can do product shots too for your company, right? Well, now you have to, I don't know photography well at all, but I assume lighting is different.
Yeah.
You have to get different equipment.
Right.
The editing process is different. And then while you're there, the photographer says, oh, I see you have that automobile collection. He says, oh yeah, I'm a collector of automobiles. Could you photograph those? Sure. The whole game changes again. Now we have to, basically be photographing forms of art, and things change. And then someone says, hey, we have an event coming in. Could you film it? I mean, you got that camera of yours. You can push the film video and get 15 seconds of a clip. Now you're become a videographer. And that's almost an extreme example, but every time we introduce a new offering, it dilutes our ability to be masterful at one thing. And one thing we all should know is the master of something gets the massive premium. The classic analogy is the winner of the Olympics. Everyone knows Michael Phelps, got his billionth gold in swimming. Who got second place? Maybe a few people know. Who got third and fourth? No one knows. So all the rewards go to the number one person. And that's not just when it comes to athletes, that's in business. In every category, there's an authority. And I bet you, as a photographer, you can think, who's the world famous name? Who's that guy or gal that makes ridiculous amounts of money doing, nature shots, or doing portraits of just presidents? We have to pick our category and become domineering in it. So the only way to do this, ironically, is by narrowing down our offering. So what we need to do to facilitate growth is look at our existing client base, say, what do we do best, and who do we like doing it most for? Who are those best customers, and what do we deliver best to them? Then actually clip off the other offerings and cater more to that community and say, listen, I'm going to elevate that game. I'm going to be even better at this. I'm going to be the top elite 1%, the Michael Phelps of our industry, and focus and concentrate. That will build a reputation of excellence. That dictates massive premiums, and that dictates explosive growth. That's often the next step once you've figured out the profit formula.
I love it. That's what we've talked about on this podcast before. Just the idea of niching down. Don't do everything. Do one thing, and just say, "Hey, this is my thing." It's the difference between going to McDonald's or going to there is this burger place in the middle of Manhattan.
Right.
It's a totally different mindset. And when you niche down, people will pay for the expertise, and you only have to sell, 10 of whatever you do that day, or the amount that you have to do is smaller because hopefully the income is larger, the sales are bigger.
That's so right. There's a saying, if you want to be rich, you got to niche, bitch.
I've never heard that.
You've heard that, right?
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, man, there we have it. Michael, thanks for coming on. I want to know, what are some of your goals for 2019? I know you're working on your next book, Pushing Clockwork. Anything else fun you're working on? Personal or professional?
So I've been really blessed with the popularity of my books that I've been able to structure arrangements with other companies. So for Clockwork, I have a company that acquired the rights in its entirety. The company's called Run Like Clockwork, and they are out there actively teaching it and building a system. So my goal in 2019 is to support these organizations. Profit First has an organization called Profit First Professionals that I'm actively involved in. So that's my mission for this upcoming year, is to really service and support those companies while writing and researching and then ultimately writing my newest book that will come out in 2020.
Awesome, man. I love it. Well, thanks for coming on, man. And hopefully more people will read Profit First and read Clockwork, and their businesses will change just like mine did. I appreciate it, man.
It would be an honor if people check it out. Thanks, Adam. I appreciate this.
Wow. If your brain is not just turning right now with all the little things that you can be focused on or learning, that was a packed podcast. And Michael is one of the people that I feel, he's not a photographer, right? He's not in our industry, but he's influenced my business so much. And kind of like I said, the proof is in the pudding. I'd be happy to share, if we want to have coffee and you want to see my P&L statements, the accountant was so surprised that we had 300% more cash in our bank accounts. And not all of that is profit, not all of that is revenue, but that is spread out because of Michael's Profit First system that I adapted a little bit over a year ago. And I love that. We've talked about the best books that changed my business, and we talked about Profit First during that time too. I'm going to pick up Clockwork, and I can't wait to read it. It's going to be really fun because, it's so good to dive into the business side of your business. It seems obvious, but if we can be better at the business side of what we do, it will oftentimes reveal, more time, more just influence and calling in the art craft that we're making, the services or the products that we're making, as long as our business is running like a well-oiled machine. So good to have him on. So good to have him on. One favor, I would love if you guys left a 5-star review on iTunes. I want to know what you think of the show. We're about 25 episodes away from hitting our 100th episode. And so I want to know how we can serve you in the next 100 episodes, how we can do that better. So thank you so much, guys. Keep being awesome.